Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe. Suniti has chosen for us today verse 61. Verse 61. Manara Smarana Prana Madhura Madhura Dhamma Yugala Vilasha Smirati Sara Sadhya Sadhanai Iha Boyarnai Ai Tattva Sarva Tattva Sara. And Advaita Das translation: the very life of the mind is smarana, and the sweetest remembrance is the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. This is the goal, and this is the practice. And there is nothing more than this. This truth is the essence of all regulative principles. Now, there's so much here, I think I'll repeat. The very life of the mind is smarana, and the sweetest remembrance is the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. This is the goal, and this is the practice. And there is nothing more than this. The truth is the essence of all regulative principles. It's a very sweet verse that Suniti has given us today, and it contains everything, really, that we need to know to practice and to understand where we are situated in our practice. And what's particularly special about it is that it helps us to understand the relation between material experience and spiritual experience. And I'll try to explain why I think that's true. It tells us how to live in relation to the spiritual world. It tells us how to live as sadhikavesh, but relate to our own shidavesh at the same time, that we have one foot in material world, but an experience, the other foot in spiritual world, spiritual body. So it tells us, Radhe, so nice, welcome. It tells us in a way about the door between the two, about the passage between the two, the relation between the two. And this goes through this very well-known idea of smarana, which is one of the basic practices of bhakti. According to this verse, it's the main practice of bhakti. So the mind is material, we know. Consciousness, material consciousness, the home of material consciousness. And yet, through smarana, we have a relation to spiritual experience. Smarana is a way of connecting our mind to the lila. And that's exactly what the verse tells us we should do. In smarana, the best thing we can do with in smarana, is to remember the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. This is not only the goal, but it's actually the practice. It's what we do when we're doing bhakti. So smarana is a special, almost paradoxical practice. We talked about it in the Bhagavad Gita class. Smarana means two things, doesn't it, in Sanskrit? It means remembering, and it means thinking about. So it points to some sort of relation, some sort of experience we've already had in the past, remembering something that's happened to us, that's in our lives, is part of our consciousness. And then thinking about part is right now we need to connect to something, connect with thought, think about Krishna, think about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, as the verse tells us. So it has this very special relationship about something that's already happened and something that's still happening. Remembering and thinking about. And to take remembering first, what's very special about remembering, it means obviously that we've already seen it. We've already had some experience of Krishna or Radha Mohan or whatever we're doing smarana of. And now we're thinking about an experience we've already had. And by thinking about it, we're having a new experience of something we already had. If we can do smarana, it means, in a way, that we've had this contact with the Radha Mohan, that we know what it is. We have some experience, maybe only small, minor experience, but that we already have experienced Radha Mohan. If Smarana makes meaning for us, it means that we already have some spiritual experience. That's a very strong and very encouraging thing. So when part of our practice is to think about God, to think about Radha Mohan, we can also take great comfort in knowing that when we're thinking about them, they are there. That somehow we're in a partial spiritual experience of them being there. If we can conjure them, that means that somehow they're present. That doesn't mean completely present. It might be just a trace of an idea, of a thought, of a memory, but it means that there's a connection. And this is very nice in the which line? The second line, Madhura Madhura Dhamma, which means literally sweet, sweet home, or sweet, sweet abode. And the Advaita Das translates the sweetest remembrance. It's the sweetest remembrance. But actually, literally, which is a very nice translation, but literally it means the sweetness that lives in us, or to go where the sweetness is living. And that sweetness, again, if we're feeling it, if we're thinking it, that means somewhere its abode is in us. The abode of the Madhura, the sweet sweetness, is in us. That Dhamma is not some faraway country that we've never been to. It's something that, it's an abode, it's a home, and a home we live in. So somehow, this sweetness is living in us. And so this is how I understand Smarana. Somehow being reminded of what's inside us, being reminded of this presence of Radha Mohan in our own souls, in our own hearts. Not that we're participating in the Leela, not that we're fully absorbed in the spiritual world, but that there's a presence. And this agrees with the idea that we hear about so often, also in Bhagavad Gita, that we, as Atma, we are part and parcel of the Paramatma. So that our soul is a part of the soul of God. There's a little bit of Radha Mohan in us. There's a little bit of Radharani's energy in us, a part and parcel of Radha Mohan or Radharani. So when we talk about this sweetness in the home, in the abode, the Dhamma, the Madhura Dhamma, then we're talking about the sweetness of Radha that's in our hearts, that's smiling to us from our hearts, and that we also identify around us. I'll come back to this idea of seeing Radha in the world, which it seems to me I talk about a lot, maybe too much. But when we recognize the sweetness at home, in the heart, then we're in a way recognizing that Radha is peeking up at us from our hearts. We see Radha's smiling through our feelings. We see Radha's naughtiness peeking up at us from our souls, from our hearts. So in a way, we can detect through Smarana this presence of the energies of Radharani in our own hearts and souls. The loving ones, the playful ones, the naughty ones. And then it goes the other way too, because when I see the pleasure in your face, when I see the smile on your face, then I also see a trace of the Radharani in your heart. I know the pleasure that's in your smile is coming from your own soul and from Radharani smiling inside you. And when you smile, I smile, and you smile, and you smile. And we're sort of connecting this pleasure of Radharani. It's my favorite example of Radharani. It's this pleasure that you feel in these muscles when the human face smiles. It's just irresistible. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Please.
This, actually, it's interesting that this became my meter that I'm in the right place.
Yes.
Sometimes this freezes in this position, like in a smile, which that can't go down. And this I felt many times, and especially when we are totally inside some nice Radha Katha, or like smile comes naturally. I remember when in summer I was in Germany with Jananda, Raseshwari, Suniti, Varasundara, and others, of course, there. And there we were so much talking, sharing. And I remember my smile couldn't go down. I was all time feeling like this here and can't go down, So this you nicely said, it's felt in a smile.
Well, yeah, think of a baby, baby is too small to learn how to smile, doesn't understand jokes. Maybe you can tickle a baby, but it's just this pleasure. A baby feels pleasure when it smiles. And this is the original pleasure of recognizing the Radharani in your soul. So this is how I understand smarana, remembering and thinking about. It's remembering and thinking about this pleasure that you already have inside you. And the challenge is not to go out in the forest, go to heaven, go to wherever you need to go and find it. The challenge is opening it up, realizing that you have it inside you already, realizing that it's already happening inside you, realizing that it's already an experience you're having. And this is then what I think Narottama Das Thakur means when he talks about the life of the mind. So the very first line of the verse was, the very life of the mind is smarana. So there are lots of things to say around the sweetness, but this is what the function of the mind is to do. This is what makes the mind live. It's the word is prana, life. Manara smarana prana, the life of the mind is smarana. It's what gives life. And Gurudev often talks about how you look at a dead body and you see there's no life. Well, it's because there's no soul. And what gives life to a body, what gives life to the material consciousness, which is called the mind, this is this smarana, the remembering of this joy, of this love that is Radharani's presence inside you. And then the next thing he says, Narottama Das Thakur, is that this is both our goal and our practice. Both our goal and our practice. So to reach this smarana, to perfect it, to have full awareness of Radharani in us, that's the goal. And to get there, the practice is to repeatedly think about her. Try to realize her and Krishna, the Leela itself going on somehow in our own souls. Vrindavan Dham is inside us just as much as it's outside us. It's not a place, a material place. It's not a physical place. Vrindavan Dham. It's a spiritual place. That means it can be anywhere. And it's in spiritual territory. So in my understanding, Vrindavan Dham is in everyone's soul, inside everyone. Now, Anantadas Babaji, in his commentary, calls this prana, which just means life essentially, he calls it life force, the life force of the mind, which again it makes us think that the energy keeping us alive, whenever we hear the word energy, Shakti, we think about Radharani as the energy of pleasure, Ladini Shakti, and the energy of love, Prema Shakti. So when Anantadas Babaji says this is life force, life energy, my thinking goes directly to Radharani, and I think this smarana is an expression of the Shakti, it's a Radha Shakti, it's the energy of Radharani. So smarana isn't energy itself, but it's kind of an expression of this energy. It's carrying along the loving energy of Radharani. So let's read a little bit what Anantadas Babaji says then. He says in this Tripadi, in this verse, composed by the blessed author, the main item of Raganuga Bhakti, namely Smaranga Bhakti, is revealed. First it is said, says Ananda, Manara Smarana Prana. And he gives then several examples of how Smarana makes things appear. He gives actually 4 examples in the first few lines of the commentary. And they are examples, each of them, of how Radharani appears in our lives. So he says, I read again, I cite, when we see the flash of lightning, we dread the rolling of the thunder, for we remember that the sound is coming along with the lightning. So the mind sees something, the eyes register the lightning, and our hearts feel fear. Our souls react. The mind sees and the heart reacts. Second example. We can tell how delicious the food is that we have enjoyed before in the past, even if we do not savor it now, for we can recollect its relish. We can tell how delicious the food is that we have enjoyed before, even if we do not savor it now, for we can recollect its relish. Sorry, hard reading. So we see the food or we smell the food and we have this memory, this smarana of the food, something we've enjoyed, gave us pleasure in our hearts, and we enjoy that even though we're only seeing it with our eyes or smelling it with our material nose. So again, there's a material connection, there's a material experience connected with something in our hearts, connected with something in our souls. Third example, when we see a beautiful flower, we can say how it smells, for that fragrance was so sweet to us before. It's very simple. It's a memory of a feeling. And a memory of a feeling is smarana. It's a connection between the mind, which is the facts, and the emotion that we had when we had the facts last time. This is what it means to connect material experience with spiritual life.
So, Uddhava, it seems to be that always when we explain some experience, we are not in this experience, but we are in the feeling of this experience.
I think we cannot explain anything without feeling. If I just give you pure mathematics to explain the color of the carpet here, you will not understand, or you'll experience nothing. I could give you the wavelength of all the colors on the floor. You will look like a dead man. But if I put it yellow and green, it's green like the grass and it's blue like the sky, then you have an experience of it.
You know, I'm very, very grateful on this verse, on the explanation of this verse, because it's very essential of whatever I hear before. It's really, it reminds me, you said that it is remembering in the same time is
thinking about.
So it's in me came some impression is like remembering of the eternal presence.
Yes,
like pilgrimage in the present. I mean, we are recording something what exists, eternally exists. We are immediately connected with eternal. Remembering usually something what is past. But by remembering, in this case, we are connected with the present.
That's it. That's it exactly, yeah. So it's almost saying thinking about is remembering. That is to say, thinking about is always being in the feeling of something that you've been experiencing before.
Yeah, like you said, actually there are 2 types of smaranam. Remembering and thinking of. Yeah? In one way, yeah, we can say that thinking of is also like remembering, but also there is part of imagination where we can imagine something new in connection with, for example, with Radha and Krishna. But I wanted to say how I was talking 2 days ago, I think, or yesterday. No, Monday. Monday was 2 days ago. I have no idea which day.
No matter.
No. Anyway,
You're thinking about and remembering, yes.
yeah, I was actually, we were talking here actually about also smarana and how in life we can even see some things or some events and which are maybe not directly connected with the object or subject of our smaranam, but it can remind us. And then we enter into smaranam. Like, for example, when we are driving on a highway through Croatia, there go many trucks that have the title Barshan, on the sides. And immediately we are reminded of Vrindavan. So in that way, this is just a word which is not even, let's say, grammatically correct in the name of Vrindavan, but again reminds us about Radha and Krishna. So, and smaranam, we know this is the main process. So we should always try and see everywhere Radhika and Krishna, our Ishtadev, because we can do that through colors, through smells. I mean, when I feel the smell of incense, immediately person reminds. Yeah. It reminds us, about our Ishtadev. Or when we, for example, hear the flute music, or even in far away, I love to hear, for example, devotees when they do Harinam in town. Some, ISKCON devotees, I'm not in ISKCON, but I like to see them, because immediately reminds me of Radha and Krishna.
But the consequence, please.
I want just have decided to give few examples how smarana is become reality. I visited 1 year ago one seminar where was a lot of meditations. And by meditations, lady who led this seminar, he created reality. It was inside of us. And by this, we received a real physical effect for curing or something else. For example, she gave us, anesthesia? It means to make some part of body not feeling pain. Yeah. Just by meditation, we received result in some of part of body with effect, even nothing doing physically, just by working with consciousness, with mind. And it's my own experience how it's work. It's like some magic. But what we are thinking become real. Or for example, hypnosis. It's nothing happen physically. The person just telling was this coin on your hand very hot. And he receiving burning, even nothing. Or nothing, even coin. It's become real.
Yeah. Thank you. I think the consequences of this idea with all these really nice examples is that we cannot understand anything of our world without this spiritual experience behind it, without smarana. All understanding, if I just talk about the wavelength of the color of the floor, you understand nothing. But if it links to the feeling you've had from your life, spiritual feeling, then it's understandable. So that in the extreme, only things that have this spiritual texture to them can be understood by human beings. And to realize this is to come to the point where the spiritual becomes the reality. So instead of sitting in a room of facts, full of facts, and thinking back about the flower I smelled once, and then looking at the flower through my empirical eyes, my factual eyes, they become one. So my material senses and my spiritual smarana come together and become one, so that the only reality is the spiritual one. And that we realize that the material sense reality is not reality. Am I making sense?
I wanted in connection with this say that for remembering, we need to have the experience of something that we can remember it. Yeah, we can imagine some things, of course, but if we experienced something, then we can remember it. For example, if I tell you now there is a rose in front of you, that you imagine a rose in front of you and you smell it, you will know what's the smell of the rose because you tried it. You have it imprinted in your mind. So in that way, when we
in your soul, in your feelings,
soul, in your feelings, yeah. So when we have some experiences and more experiences in our spiritual life, our smaranam can go deeper and deeper. In the beginning, smaranam is connected with the, for example, reading texts of the acharyas who are telling their own experiences. But through time, as we get experiences, that smaranam goes deeper because we also can remember our own experiences and the feelings that we felt. So we get these experiences directly or through other Vaishnavas and other acharyas who were writing about it or talking about it.
So Uddhava Prabhu also experience of the experience who have experience have the same effect, seems to be.
Mm-hmm. And the fully realized soul will have the shared experience, but there'll be one experience. My experience and yours will be the same if we were fully realized, soul realized, because our souls would be merged. So what you feel of the flower would be the same thing as what I feel of the flower. This is the most advanced stage, if you like, of realization. Shall we continue? There was one more example that Anantadas Babaji had of this phenomenon, and that was of a child who cannot speak, who burns himself. Let's see. This is Anantadas speaking now. The little speechless child places its hand only once into the fire and never again. Rather, when he sees fire, he backs away, for he remembers that its touch will burn him and hurt him. So again, it's not the data, the fact, the science of the fire that he remembers. It's the feeling. It almost seems trivial and mundane, but it's the feeling that he will always have in his heart and not in his brain that will keep him from putting his hand in the fire again. And then Anantadas Babaji continues, although we use or accept gross matters through our gross senses, we will not experience anything if our minds are not at it. In this way, the mind, which is the center of all senses, may be incorporeal. It is able to give us all kinds of experiences. So this comment is a bit confusing, I find. It's saying that these emotional experiences, these feelings, these what we've been calling spiritual experiences, come back to the mind. They become connected to the mind. So in some way, the mind has a very close relation with the spirit and the feelings that we have of the mental experiences. So the mental experiences always have a close connection with the spiritual experiences. Will you want to?
Yeah, I mean, he was mentioning that we will not feel it if we are not in it, yeah? Something like that?
Yeah.
You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is similar when we are eating. We can eat mechanically. And we will get the food and all is okay. But shall we really feel the food if we quickly eat and not focus on the tastes and the feelings, texture, taste? If we are focusing, then we will feel it. So actually, similarly in our bhajana, we are using our mind. Mind is a tool. And for example, when we do chanting, we can do mechanical chanting. Today, Gurudev was talking when was initiation about this, that we need to be in that, to really feel, to see that our chanting is not mechanical, just I will do it and I'm finished. But the point is to really be focused during chanting. And I can't remember from who I was reading, but I was reading that, I think from Vinod Baba, some text I saw, that by focusing our mind, we actually make space for Radha and Krishna to dance in our mind. If we put some other things in our mind, there is no space for them to dance there. So when we are chanting, we need to allow them to enter our mind, see them entering our thoughts, and dance in our mind. Allow them to be there present. In that way, we are, even when we are chanting or doing anything, we are remembering them, allowing them to enter our mind. And by focusing, again, I will say what I said a few days ago, what I heard from Tony Robbins from USA, just one sentence. Where the focus goes, energy flows. And the mind is controlled by focus. On what are we focusing on? So, maybe also Nantas Babaji after said something about that.
He does.
Yeah.
But it's very nice what you say, and we could ask why, when we focus, when we're one pointed, as Gurudev says, or we're in Sthai Bhava, as many say, then the material sensations become minimized, and all that's the only space left is for the spiritual ones, for the dancing. It's a little bit what Anantadas Babaji says now, as he continues, and I'll read. From beginningless time, the human mind has been turned away from God and has become so polluted by thinking of mundane objects that it constantly billows on high and low waves of thoughts, of small and large sense enjoyments, just as high and low waves billow on the ocean. So it seems like we have two different problems, or two not different problems, two related problems. The one is that we turn away from God, and the other is that we're polluted in mundane problems, mundane facts. And of course, the solution is, there's one solution to both problems, and that's focus. And focusing, then we're no longer polluted by the mundane. And when we focus, then we're not turned away from God anymore.
How possible for the soul which have contact with sweet Lord to turn from Him?
Well,
Means something more attractive for soul.
No, it's the mind that turns, not the soul.
Okay, mind.
The mind is always finding something it thinks is more attractive.
But it's written here, the smarana for Radha Krishna is life itself for the mind. How it's reconciled?
Yeah, how it's possible that it turned at some time away from God.
But then it's the mind is dying or dead or half alive, or the mind is always confused about what it gets pleasure from. No? It's always thinking about material pleasures and seeking to increase material pleasures and forgetting about spiritual. No, I understand your question though, but you're absolutely right. The mind,
doesn't like we said it. Sorry.
The heart doesn't turn to anything better. The heart has only one source of pleasure, and that's God. But the mind has pleasure from all sorts of things. And then Babaji turns to the intelligence, which is the faculty of the mind. And he says, our intelligence cannot accept all thoughts. Only particular thoughts are captured by the intelligence. So it cannot have a picture of the world itself, of reality itself. It only can identify facts and small things. It's myopic. It has a narrow focus. And so it cannot see the divine reality because it cannot see cannot see beyond the material objects in front of the material senses. And we can only capture the divine through our spiritual senses, which see everything. That's what a spiritual sense is. It's a sense that can sense everything at once, all of the divine at once. So we're only capturing with our senses a little bit of reality, which is why it takes so long to be impressed by the divine. We only see small bits of facts, small bits of pleasure, and nothing comparing to the complete cosmic experience of the divine. In a way, we need to learn to, if we could capture everything with the mind, then we would be in the soul. Is that the way of putting it? Babaji goes on, what to speak of the waking state? Even in a state of slumber, the waves of sensual impressions billow on, and this state we thus call swapna, or dream. Only when the state of deep sleep enters, the waves of thoughts stop. Practicing devotee performs all his plays with this mind. For when the mind is not concentrated on bhajan, it may proceed in a mechanical way for a long time, but the fruit of bhajan, namely prema, will not be yielded. So popping about, looking for the small experiences, the small sense experiences, the mechanical ones, the factual ones, will not bring us prema. And again, Ananta Das Babaji says, through the practice of bhajan, which is attained by the grace of the Lord and his devotees, the mind, which is muddled by thoughts of sensual desires, is purified and gives up its experiences of sensual thoughts that are unrelated to Krishna. So this is something we hear often. The mind can be purified through bhajan, because bhajan makes us relate directly to our own spiritual experience. Bhajan is putting our mind in the service of Radharani, making her active in our heart instead of our mind active.
The point here is mind, in a way, is searching for pleasure.
Yes.
And we see that. And if our bhajan is mechanical, our practice is only mechanical, pleasure will not come. We of course want pleasure of Radhika, but we are conditioned that, especially in the beginning, we are also searching for pleasure, our happiness also. Yeah? So what happens with the devotees who are mechanically always trying to do bhajan, mechanically chanting, mechanically doing anything, any seva? What happens is that they become dry, because in one way they are trying to do this, feeling even maybe guilty that they are not receiving anything back, and maybe that they are not worth it or whatever. But the point is that in bhajana, we should feel happiness also. It's muted or not? No, it's okay. So we are actually, if we are feeling something in our bhajan, this helps us and helps our mind to go to search more in that direction.
That's exactly the point, yes.
Because if it's boring and we are do it like forcefully, mechanically, we can do it sometime. Yeah, we can hit our head and say, do it. But this can go just for some time. After some time, we'll say, I'm fed up. I don't want this. That's why it's important that we also watch. How do we feel? Like, for example, if some devotee comes to me and says, I'm doing this, I just ask him, are you happy? Just that question. I ask him, are you happy? And if they are happy, who am I to change that? You know? If they are happy in their practice. And we need to sometimes question ourselves. Are we happy? Are we fulfilled in this? Are we progressing? Is there some change in us? Our minds? Are we more attracted to Radhika? Or we are just trying something, pushing, you know, and nothing happening? Why there is a difference between Vaidhi and Raganuga? For me, Vaidhi means I will push through. I will use my muscles to push through everything. And Raganuga for me feels I will be pulled by love. I will be pulled by Radhika's love. I will do something, of course, not that I will not do nothing, but I will be pulled. So there is a difference between pushing through or being pulled through. So that's mine. And mind here plays a role in this.
Thank you. Let's come up and then we'll stop.
I have to be quick because of the kirtan. Radhe, I have a question because my mind is strong, but he don't needs pleasure. He is my whole life I had challenges. I had to work, and it's so saying a pleasure for me to be challenged with my mind, to be trained with my mind, and the loving feelings, they're coming from my heart. And when I'm in my heart, I feel I'm totally satisfied. And when I have some feelings, material, nice or spiritual, sometimes I don't know. But then my mind comes and he wants to do more. Not only chanting is boring for him. This is my problem. Only this chanting is automatically, then it becomes automatically when it's boring for my mind. Listening is easier. But what can I do when I'm chanting and my mind says, whoa, go to this, and he wants to do everything and need challenge. How can I challenge my mind with chanting? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that he's fixed.
Are you going to answer?
I just wanted
briefly, and then we have to stop.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you love challenges.
My mind.
Your mind loves challenges.
Sometimes.
Yeah, make a challenge to chant and always remember them and see them dancing. Make that challenge if your mind likes challenge. How Gurudev said, try to do it 1, 2, 3 hours per day for 1 week, and you will see big change in 1 week. Then give him better challenge. But in that connection with your bhajan, think about it. Play with it. Yeah, play with it. Make it a play. But play which is directed towards Radha and Mohan. Yeah, maybe your mind needs this entertainment. Okay, yeah, why not? But just change the game. Direction of the game. That's the point. Think about it. I cannot give you a direct answer. I can like that give you an idea. But you need to see what will best work for you to change the focus.
Narottam Das Thakur ki
Jai.
Anantaras Babaji ki
Jai.
Gurudev ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Radhe.